Sarah Thomas. I am one of the project coordinators with the Transforming Masculinities project. I have the great pleasure of working with most of our presenters who are going to be here with us today. And I would like to get us going by introducing Adrian Wolfleg. I want to officially welcome everyone to today's webinar, and I would love to introduce my colleagues, Liza Lorenzetti and Aamir Jamal, who are both associate professors at the University of Calgary, as well as project leads on stories of personal transformation, as well as my colleague, Janelle Pong, who is a master's student at the University of Calgary. She is specializing in clinical practice and is co-research coordinator on this project.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you, Adrian, for such a lovely, such a beautiful prayer. It means so much. And thank you so much, everyone here, for your time today. We are very grateful for that. We are so excited to begin another online session of our SHARK-funded project on stories of personal transformation, men working for violence prevention and gender equity. Each word in this title is so close to our heart. Being a man who was raised in Pakistan on the border of Afghanistan, I witnessed gender justice issues. I witnessed how women's rights are being violated throughout my life. This project, this topic is so close to my heart. And then I started doing research since last couple of years, and now with Liza on gender justice. So this is the area very close to my heart. And yes, we are excitingly looking forward to those stories of men, those men who want to stand for gender justice, who want to work for gender justice. We want to hear from them. And we are sure that those stories won't be just stories. Those stories will influence dialogue and social change from within the communities across the globe and offer best practices for men's participation in gender justice and violence prevention work.
Thank you so much, Aamir. And I just wanted to thank again Brother Adrian for opening us in a good way. And Adrian is the knowledge keeper for the Alberta Men's Network. And so as my brother Aamir said, we are really excited. And we came to this project together from different backgrounds, but backgrounds that really made us think in a very similar way about what we need to do. And so for me, I am a 2.5 generation Italian settler here in Mohistris, which is in Turtle Island, also known as Canada, and have been working for about 30 years as a social worker, primarily working in the area of violence prevention in women's shelters at the Immigrant Women's Association, working with survivors of war, survivors of violence, and really trying to walk and a reconciliatory and anti-racist journey. And for me, this work really is a culmination of all the times I've thought that we need a really holistic approach to well-being, to healthy relationships, and to social justice. And so I'm so excited to be in this project. We have a wonderful group of partners, many who are here today from the Caribbean, Pakistan, Canada, and Nepal. So now I'm going to turn it to Janelle and Sarah, who will speak more about the project.
Yeah, so as Liza and Aamir already said, this project is a community-based research project between Trinidad, Nepal, Pakistan, and Canada. And really, this project offers a unique opportunity to create a community of practice internationally. So each team is hosting a webinar to present on the gender justice work occurring in their contexts. And really, this research is looking to understand the factors that influence men's decisions to become involved in intimate partner violence prevention and gender equity initiatives and the transformative impacts of this involvement. And I'll share our 4 kind of main objectives. So one is knowledge dissemination. So sharing the local, regional, and cross-regional knowledge that we kind of compile through this process on men's involvement in this work, and to understand men's trajectories and how and why they're involved in gender justice work and their journey to get here and the impacts that it's having on them and their communities and their families. Thirdly, to examine and act on the different strategies and engagement approaches that men see as most promising, to involve other men and more men and all genders in this work. And thirdly, which Janelle will elaborate on next, but is to build a community of practice that's established on anti-colonial principles, equity, and peace building. We are working with our project knowledge keeper, Pam Beebe. We will be sharing amongst ourselves to develop a decolonial research and practice approach for this project, and be using the rich knowledge and traditions from all 4 contexts. And yeah, hoping to build an awareness of to build men's own awareness of their journeys and their transformation, and to further inform models and strategies to advance men's roles in IPV prevention and gender equity, and to enrich public discourse, which is kind of what we're doing today. I'll pass it on to Janelle.
Yeah, so as Sarah said, one of the goals of the project is to build this community of practice. So of course, we are so excited to work beyond our own Canadian context and partner with our community leaders from 4 different cultural contexts. So some of our international partnering organizations, from Pakistan, we have the University of Peshawar, and we have the Hashar Association. In the Caribbean, we have the University of West Indies, the St. Augustine campus in Trinidad, and also Carryman. And then Nepal is being represented by MacEwan University. And in Canada, we have, of course, the University of Calgary Faculty of Social Work. But we also have the Alberta Network of Immigrant Women, Alberta Men's Network also as well. So we're drawing upon the vast knowledge from our international community leaders and hoping to generate new and exciting insights. And we have a multidisciplinary team that includes students, academics, community leaders, as well as advocates and activists. And we're taking kind of the rich local and traditional knowledges from our 4 contexts, and looking at what's happening on the ground, the Indigenous knowledges from these different cultures, and taking that to a global context. Yeah. And then also working to build and invite an international community to join us. We are inviting you to join this global community and take part in our community of practice to add to this work and to really build a rich knowledge base for reducing violence in our immediate and global community and collectively working towards gender justice. And we will be interviewing through a 2-step critical narrative inquiry process. And this will include audio taped interviews and then follow-up interviews using a method of digital storytelling. And we will create video clips or digital stories from the men who will be partnering with us.
Thank you, Janelle. So I'm going to welcome back Liza Lorenzetti for the next part of this presentation, as well as I would like to introduce Lemlem Haile. Lemlem is a community social worker in Calgary and a core member of the Alberta Men's Network. And Jeff Halvorsen is a PhD student with the University of Calgary Faculty of Social Work and is the research coordinator for this project.
Hello again. Maybe we'll just, so our small talk is really going to be on a little bit of the research and understanding what we bring to the work of an anti-racist and anti-colonial approach to gender-based violence prevention, and what we call working for a just society. So I'm just going to open quickly, and I know that our brother has opened us in a good way. But just to let you know that Lemlem and I are presenting from traditional Blackfoot territory in Treaty 7, Métis Nation Region 3. And Jeff is presenting from another territory, and he can put that in the chat. And so just letting everybody know where we're coming from here in our work. And Lemlem will speak more about it. I also wanted to take a moment to just memorialize our very good friend, Dr. Vic Lantian, who has since passed away and is one of the founders of our work. So we bring him with us in this talk today.
Thank you, Lisa. Also, Brother Adrian, thank you so much for starting us in a good way. Lisa, for the land acknowledgement. My name is Lemlem Haile, and I'm so grateful to be part of this presentation. I'm going to quickly talk briefly in the context of gender-based violence in Canada. But before I do that, let's quickly look at the population makeup of Canada and stats. And in Canada, there's 6% is Indigenous, settler Europeans, about 50%, 57%, and people of color, 22%. But in order to have a deeper understanding of gender-based violence that's deeply rooted in systemic oppression, power, privilege, and structural violence, we need to interrogate and confront how Canada is founded, and the national narrative carefully curated Canada as a democratic, peaceful country with no ties to colonialism. The true history of Canada is the history of settler colonialism, the history of dispossession of Indigenous land by creating various policies and practices to forcibly assimilate and displace Indigenous people. The policies and practices such as residential schools where Indigenous children were forced to attend, practices like the Indian Act of 1876 that controlled that controls every aspects of the Indigenous lives, were instrumental in stripping Indigenous sovereignty through power and control. The impact of residential schools are still present in many generations later and right now. As part of the settler colonialism project, labor was also essential as land, which came in the form of slavery and indentured labor. Yes, Canada did have a slavery system, unlike the national narrative, the home of freedom and the Underground Railroad. The legacy of systemic exclusion and immigration policies and practices continued, such as the Chinese Immigrant Act of essentially banning Chinese immigration to Canada for 24 years, but still exploiting the indentured labor to build railway roads in Canada. So the understanding of gender-based violence is essential, how deeply embedded it is in the legacy of violence and linked to systemic and structural oppression was the history of Canada. The gender-based violence also, as I've just mentioned, is compounded with factors and intersectionality, such as immigration, state violence, war, racism, the economic disadvantage of gender and sexual identity and disabilities. I think this is clear when we see the representation of Black and Indigenous communities in the prison system and child welfare system. So I think when we're talking about gender-based violence, it's also good to look at the intersectionality that are compounding factors. Gender violence as a form of structural violence is essential also to look into, as I had quickly talked about the power and oppression that create levels of marginalization and social exclusion, which together promotes enduring systemic inequality over a generation. And also the really deep historical link to white supremacy and racism. The colonialism is also gendered, impacting many Indigenous communities, specifically women and girls, and this has come into light in the last few years because of the many work of the Indigenous activists that wanted to highlight the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and two-spirited of people. There are about 4,000 women and girls and two-spirit people that are missing. I think this that wouldn't happen in any other country. I'm thinking while I was thinking about this, I was thinking about that one white woman who was missing in the States, and how governments and policies were mobilized to find that one person. And the same thing in Canada, we have histories of that. While we have 4,000 women missing, Indigenous women missing, that has not been addressed for a long time. Because of their activism, because of the powerful, many powerful women and Indigenous women, there is 231 calls of justice, laying out the path to Indigenous led structural change.
Thanks, Lemlem. Yeah, I'm just going to talk quickly about the context of family violence in Canada. So in 2018, there was about 100,000 police reported victims of domestic violence, family violence in Canada. About 80% police reported victims were women. And overall, women experienced the vast majority of physical violence causing harm, sexual violence, coercive fear, and domestic homicide is almost exclusively women. The overall rate of family violence steadily declined from 2009 to 2016, but in the last 3 years, it has increased again, up 13% from 2016 to 2019. So the biggest impact of COVID has been the ability to access resources and make referrals. So those victim services have really been challenged, particularly during COVID. And the rates of violent crime against women are much higher among the younger population in Canada. So from 15 to 24, it's about it's nearly double the rate for women aged 35 to 44. So why involve men in making change? Violent victimization is particularly perpetrated by men. So sexual assaults, physical assaults with a weapon, and homicide. And this goes both for men and for women victims, beyond looking at all types of victimization. So violence is heightened with community or state violence. So when there's social and structural disadvantages, as well as intergenerational trauma. So men and boys are also negatively impacted by male violence, as well as women. So this comes from mental health concerns, risk-taking, alcoholism, social isolation, and harms by self and others. Looking at violence and looking beyond, so a number of initiatives have adopted a healthy relationship lens as a primary prevention approach. However, a deep analysis of repression and intersectionality is required.
I think I'm going to jump in, and I wanted to thank Lemlem for really setting the context for what our work is all about and understanding those intersections and working with them. And as Jeff pointed out, we do need to address violence, but we need to look beyond. And for us, it's that deep intersectionality in history that really impacts how we see violence today. And I thank you so much. I love this picture as well. This is a picture of my partner, Arya, who will actually be sharing later on, and Parisa. For me, this photo is what we are talking about in our work, wanting to move beyond violence prevention into healthy relationships and equity infused relationships, which really we see as a byproduct of a just society. And that is the work that we are doing. And we're so excited about that work. And that picture says safety. And that is part of what we're working towards. And so as a group of academics, activists, educators, practitioners, we began in 2012 as a group in Calgary, Canada, to take a look at what was happening with men and who was asking those questions about how we might engage men in their roles in violence prevention. And our group came up with a survey. The survey was designed primarily by men and people across genders around asking men, what do you need for personal well-being, for healthy relationships, and for violence prevention, and what roles can you play? And so this was a small survey, we thought, very small survey. We may get 50, 100 people responding. You know, we had small anticipations, and we trained over 50 community-based research assistants who went out into various language groups, cultural groups, and asked those questions. We had more than 50 respondents within a period of about 2.5 months. More than 2,000 people responded, and we did close it down when it was really even starting to roll. So we were shocked, and we thought, why are so many people responding to this survey? Media was interested, and I think it's because nobody ever asked those questions before. We did have a lot of surveys on violence perpetration and what was sort of happening in that area, which is extremely important, but nobody ever asked those primary prevention questions, the questions about how we stop this and what happened before. And so you'll see right now we did have a really strong turnout. Over 30% of our respondents were immigrant men. We had a high proportion of Indigenous men, gender and sexually diverse men, and we've got research briefs sort of talking about the experiences of all those groups. But what we heard was that the enablers for well-being, as you can see here, there were several, but across the board, strong family supports and financial stability. So back to that idea of intersectionality, back to the idea of people need their basics covered. They need to feel that they've got stability, and they need to feel that they have good friends. And for men talked about role models and people to look up to. And barriers, number one barrier, that won't surprise anyone who's a clinician or a counselor here, is trauma. So how do you have healthy relationships without violence when you're carrying trauma? When you need a good job or training. And we heard that a lot from the immigrant respondents, the negation of credentials, and then of course, addictions and family conflict. What we also heard is that 96% of respondents said, yes, men do need support for their well-being, for healthy relationships, which goes against a kind of a meta-narrative that men can do it alone. And so we also looked at specific communities. So South Asian respondents, Latino respondents, Indigenous, Black respondents, LGBTQ2 SQ respondents. And so in those communities, once again, issues such as financial insecurity, discrimination, trauma, those issues were heightened. And that's what we see, and that relates to what Lemlem shared previously. And so some key recommendations. So broaden the scope of services. We need to provide, if we want to see change, the services and supports need to be there. And as someone who has worked in the movement for a long time, it's not a competition. It's about a holistic approach. And I think that's something I've learned from my Indigenous colleagues. It's about a holistic approach. We need to build a capacity of faith leaders and role models. We need to look at policies and practices, not just on GBV, on all forms of oppression. And we need to look at addressing intergenerational trauma. child maltreatment, shifting of rigid gender norms, which I see happening, and it's quite fabulous to see that moving. And of course, culturally and locality appropriate collaborations that really reach out to men in the environments where they're at.
So thanks, Lisa. One of the things the men discussed was how they access services. So traditionally, men have difficulty finding and accessing appropriate supports. In the survey, it was about a third of men who said that they knew where to get help for supports. And what we found was that across the responses, there's many men and many different types of supports and services and ways that they identify to overcoming the barriers that they face to that initial ask for help. So the work has also been shared in previous symposium, and many of the projects that you'll be hearing about today have come from the survey, from community briefs, as well as the wonderful relationships that were developed during this work.
We just wanted to show quickly a short video, really captures the spirit of the work of AMN, but this time we want to do a shout out at this community development, community led project that we saw and we thought you would be interested in seeing.
When the SOS went up at a troubled school, who answered the call? A bunch of DADs. Here's CBS's Steve Hartman on the road.
Not many good news stories begin in such a bad news way. It happened last month here at Southwood High School in Shreveport, Louisiana.
Plagued with violence.
Over the course of 3 days,
Another fight.
23 students arrested for fighting.
Massive police response.
But strangely, there hasn't been another incident since. Perhaps in part because of this most unusual crisis intervention team.
Nobody here has a degree in school counseling. No majors in criminal justice. No. Your qualifications are?
Well, Dad, we decided the best people who can take care of our kids are who? Are us.
So Michael Lafitte started Dads on Duty.
We're out doing what we do for our babies.
A group of about 40 Southwood dads who now hang out at the school in shifts.
Let's go.
Today, any negative energy that enters the building has to run a gauntlet of good parenting.
What's going on, buddy? You moving fast. I like that horse.
I immediately felt a form of safety. We stopped fighting, people started going to class.
How could that be?
You ever heard of a look?
A look? Dads have the power to do that?
Yes. Not many people know it, but yes.
Let's go, let's go.
But it's not just the firm stares and stern warnings.
Let's make it to class, my son.
It's also the dad jokes.
They just make funny jokes like, oh, hey, your student's untied, but it's really not untied.
And they hate it. They're so embarrassed by it.
And it's that perfect mix of tough love and gentle ribbing that dads do so well that has helped transform this school.
The school has really just been like happy, and you can feel it.
Which is why the dads plan to keep coming to Southwood indefinitely.
Because not everybody has the father figure at home.
Or a male, period, in their life.
So just to be here makes a big difference.
Do you think you stumbled onto something here?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Have a good morning.
They'd like to start chapters of Dads on Duty throughout Louisiana.
What's up, baby boy?
And hope to eventually take on the country.
All right.
Without a fight. Steve Hartman, on the road in Shreveport, Louisiana.
Isn't that such an uplifting video? Thank you so much, Lemlem found it. And I think that on that positive note, I think that concludes our part of the presentation. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to Jeff and Lemlem.
I'm going to be welcoming Adrian Wolfleg back. He's going to be sharing more on Alberta Men's Network and our philosophy.
Okay, cheers. Hello, and thank you. Philosophy. What is philosophy? I go back to the definition of the study of a particular branch of knowledge and experience, which is what we did. So we were a group of people that wanted to work towards creating healthy families and communities. So how do we do this? we talked with each other, we shared, and we knew we had some similar values of nonviolence, respect, mutual respect, education, diversity, anti-oppression, belonging, that we all matter, and interconnection as a rainbow tribe. As I mentioned, we're all from communities from across the globe. And so we knew we wanted to work with men because we also knew that, society lies about men and presents this image that very few people can live up to. One of the things that I heard was, boys don't cry, men don't cry. That's a lie. We need to. And we understood that. So one of the first workshops we had was on working with grief and loss, and was well attended. And the feedback has been like amazing because, we go through loss, we go through change. And I remember one of our members was here and their partner was in another country and their child was in another country, 3 continents. How can you be a healthy, happy family? You need to rely on others and trust others to be able to do that. Thankfully, they're all here and they're a family again. But those were just a few of the challenges. And when we look at working with men, how do we work with men? Where are the men we're going to work with? Because we can't just put up a sign. People have tried that. So we examined, there's basically 7 entry routes that we were aware of. And one is fatherhood. That's an awesome way to connect. Men's health, sports and recreation, peer relationships, workplace. We looked at Aboriginal leadership and allies with women. Aboriginal leadership, because as has been shared, that's a population that has really had some challenges in the last 150 years. And they're working on their numbers and their populations because the suicides are really high, missing and murder. There's a lot of stuff that's going on. And to survive, you need to work on yourself. And so we looked at some of the models that were being done and some of the work that was being done. And rather than recreate the wheel, it's like, hey, why don't we learn from these groups? Why don't we work with them? And then when we shared different teachings we had, one of the teachings that I had shared was, about the use of language. Because today, society kind of imposes upon us through media, movies, books, so many other things that to be a good person and to have success, that we need somebody else to tell us that they love us. We need that outside validation. And even if it's a passing message, we still center around it and we believe in it. And then, with lockdown and everything, finally you got your pass and you're able to go for a latte with a friend. And they're saying, I like your hair like that, and don't you just love this song? Or don't you just love their lattes? And, I love you. And then, where'd you get those shoes? I love them. And it's like, the shoes, the latte, the music, me, where do I fit? Do I want to know? And so I backed up a bit and I shared that in Siksika, we have a couple words for love. One of them is my great aunt and uncle were married for over 60 years. They know each other. And that love is Kitsikakomem. Kitsikakomem. Literal translation, I know you. That doesn't sound like a best-selling Hallmark card, but it encapsulates to know someone, their doubts, their fears, their aspirations, their wishes, their hopes, and to be there with them and to share and to talk. That is love, because those are things we don't usually admit even to ourselves, let alone to another person, and have them stick around. That is love. Another love is that first time you hold that new life, your child, a puppy, and you just want to protect that being with everything positive and good in the universe. That love, give him a beepitsi. Give him a beepitsi. It's all engulfing and compassion. We also experience that when someone passes, and that point of contact with their urn, with their memorial card, with their body, and you want to give anything and everything for one more minute, one more hug, one more laugh, one more I love you. That is when we're born, when we leave. What about the middle? We need to work on that. And so that's what we do with Alberta Men's Network, is we go back and, those things that help people become healthy, family. We were a family, we became a family, but also the ones that had gathered, not all of us are here anymore. But we still include each other, we still have family, we still include the other family members, and we share with them, and we grow with them, we hurt with them, but we also encourage. And so that's part of our philosophy, is working with one another, accepting one another, loving one another, forgiving one another, because we come from different backgrounds. I remember early on in the meetings, there's somebody casually, there was something that talked about homosexuality. And somebody said, well, that's illegal in my country. And I countered, it's not legal here. The point is, okay, which country is yours? And that's a big transition if you've ever transitioned from someplace else. Where is home? Even here, if you're born and raised here, what is home? Is home the city, the municipality, the province, the country? Where is your allegiance? And if you came from someplace else, you have all these other messages. So we look at things, because when we were doing those surveys and we did the demographics, and one of them was sexuality, and we had the roster, so homosexual, heterosexual, bisexual, and then you could write it in. And there was a group of individuals who wrote in normal. Well, we all hope we're normal, but that was a statement. And it's a message to work with this community and to help them and to hear them. Because those surveys, 96% told us that men can't do it on their own. 76% said they didn't know where to get help. 34%, their belief, their understanding of masculinity affected them getting help. Because remember, men aren't supposed to cry. They're not also supposed to get help. They're not supposed to seek help, They're supposed to be strong and stoic. But yet, look at our suicide rates. Look at the depression rates. Look at the addiction rates. And the dangerous thing is, with addiction rates, violence, there's a correlation. And not just bruises, but fatalities. So that's what we try to do, to create healthy families where people can talk, where people can share, where people can question themselves. You can question your parents. You can question your relationship with your kids. And your kids can question you to see, why is this? How is this? What are we going to do? And those words and those surveys, we put them together in some reports, and we broke the reports because we had enough numbers to break it into different populations. But overall, the information has been shared. Calgary, Edmonton, Red Deer, Vancouver, Regina, Toronto, New York, Ottawa, San Jose, San Diego, Atlanta, Hawaii, Budapest, South Korea, and Spain. So people want to hear, people want to learn, and people want to be a part of. And we're a bit of a dreamer when we started out, because that Men's Action Network - Calgary, we knew we weren't the be all end all, but we wanted to start something, be a part of something. And we left it that way so others, so there might be Men's Action Network London, Men's Action Network Austin, Men's Action Network Hilo. And it can, because we're willing to share the work. We're willing to learn from others too, and bring that into our teachings. But I want to wrap it up here and just kind of leave that with you. So our philosophy kind of goes back to, it's a brotherhood, and it's family, it's fraternal. So that's part of our philosophy that I just want to share with you. And you're going to hear a lot of other things. And I just want to thank my brothers and sisters on the team that are here, and those that are with us in spirit, and those that weren't able to be here today. And even when we look at that, there's other terms that we don't have. I was aware growing up of 5 words for gender in Blackfoot, but my niece corrected me. She did a project and she taught me that we had 7. So we need those voices too. We need them in community. We need their teachings. We need you. So thank you. I'm going to pass it back over to Sarah here now.
Thank you so much, Adrian. I know that you have a busy day, and so it just means so much to spend your morning with us. And it's so nice to see your face. So thank you for that. Aamir is going to join us again to talk about the Hujra nights.
Sure, thank you so much, Adrian. Inspiring talk. I'm going to take you thousands of miles away from here for a bit on the borders of Afghanistan and Pakistan. And then we come back to Canada. So this is a project of bringing Hujra to Canada, a culturally relevant, community-based transformative learning approach for gender justice among Pashtun community in Canada. So this is the region, Pashtun region I was talking about. It is on the border of Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iran. And on the other side, there are China and other countries. So just to give you a little context. So when in Canada, the same Pashtun community, Afghan community, they still came here recently due to those conflicts and wars. And they've been going through a lot throughout for more than 40 years in recent conflicts. So there was a lot of trauma and all that. And most of these communities are escaping those wars and conflicts, and some come as skilled workers, but many of them are refugees and asylum seekers. So in estimate is around 25,000 to 3,000 Pashtuns living in Calgary here and mostly settled in metropolitan regions. They come here, of course, they come here with some sort of their own background and their values and tradition and religious tradition and socio-cultural tradition. So we thought it was kind of a unique idea of the group that what we can do is, what we can try out is, why not to use the same institution, that cultural institution of Pashtun community that they know about, they take care about, and they are well aware about. So these are the Hujra is a Pashtun institution. Every Pashtun really know about it, the etiquettes of it, the cultural norms and tradition. So when men come together and they talk about their issues, their concerns, their social issues, even their economic and political issues, and it's also a kind of a forum for socialization in which they talk about it. And there is some transformation going on in these Hujras. So we realized, next slide, that why not to bring this Hujra to Canada? When you ask here in Calgary, and US, in UK, anyone, any Pashtun Hujra, and he get the whole model, he get the concept. So we thought, why not to have a culturally oriented, culturally sensitive model for social transformation of Pashtuns? And we applied that model here in Calgary. And we had some wonderful sessions on the key aspect of Pashtun masculinity and bringing that social change, that positive change in context of well-being and healthy families. So we had 3 sessions. There were 82 participants. We began each session because we wanted to bring that cultural flavor in the session, that cultural sensitivities in the session with traditional Pashtun food, with traditional music of Pashtun, with traditional, because there is more, it's an indigenous community over there. It's more about oral tradition. So those stories are meaningful. Stories has the messages, and stories are reflective and bringing social change in the community. So we begin with stories. Everybody was sharing stories of their villages. And when we start stories, the whole environment changed in the session, I remember. So we began with this kind of with stories, and I kind of introduced my book, which is the first book on this topic for the region. And Pashtun came together, and we start talking about this Hujra model in the community. And we brought the gender justice lens to it. So Hujra Night 2 was focused on what does it mean to be a Pashtun man? And we spoke on the Pashtun masculine. There was a lot going on. Hujra 3 was more on a feedback from Hujra 1. What does it mean to be a Pashtun man? And then we spoke about the well-being of Pashtun men and it's the well-being impact on gender justice and healthy families. Our approach was self-development. developing men's capacities and role modeling of those men, education, awareness, and then finally promoting those healthy masculinity and positive role of men. So themes were in discussion in all those three, basically those three sessions: men's well-being, parenting, transformation, gender justice, and mental health. That insight from the community was that they appreciated it because they never had, as far as I know, as far as from their feedback, this chance of asking, reflecting on the question, what does it mean to be a man? And then its connection with the well-being of men. So the model was deeply culturally relevant for social change. It was easy for them to understand the context because it was emerging from within. It was a significant co-construction. So we were not kind of imposing something or suggesting something or guiding. It was co-construction about all those men, about gender justice and domestic violence. So it was, the feedback was, it was a useful experience of reflecting on their masculinity. And one key concept that emerged is that it was not just local. They start sharing that knowledge globally in their home communities. So there is a common concept there. Then people, skilled people are coming from there. So it is a brain drain. But we realize here it was a brain gain in various ways, locally and globally. Thank you. Yeah, so this was a very quick kind of snapshot of all those 3-4 sessions of Hujra night.
Next up, I'm going to introduce Bhakti. Bhakti is in her 4th year of her Bachelor of Social Work degree at the University of Calgary, and she is currently doing her practicum with Alberta Men's Network.
Thank you, Sarah, for this wonderful introduction. So, as Sarah mentioned, I'll be talking about honoring fathers and daughters. So it is a local community-based event in Calgary, Alberta. And I was involved in coordinating this project over the summer as part of my undergraduate research. So how did this project started? The first Honoring Fathers and Daughters event was hosted in 2017 in Calgary. It was initiated by fathers involved with Alberta Men's Network. These fathers wanted to raise awareness about traditional gender norms around fatherhood and acknowledge the importance of girl children across diverse cultures where often boys are still preferred and privileged. Men are often discouraged from having close relationships with their daughters, and they suppress these natural emotions about nurturing parental relationships because of societal expectations. This event creates awareness and fosters healthy relationship building for the local multicultural families and their communities. Based on the response received, the second event was hosted in 2019. Next slide. So in July 2021, we hosted the third event outdoors, considering the evolving pandemic restrictions, and somehow things magically worked out at that time for this to happen in the middle of a global pandemic. There were approximately 75 people, primarily from South Asian backgrounds, including fathers and father-like figures such as uncles and guardians, and also mothers and children. At the event, many fathers openly spoke about the meaning of fatherhood and the importance of girls and all children in their lives. The families were given a chance to engage in some other activities, such as writing appreciation letters to their children, a question and answer memory game about their children's preferences, and Indigenous drumming and singing led by Chantal Chagnon, a local Indigenous drum maker, singer, and advocate. Parents were given a brief event feedback survey approved by the University of Calgary Conjoint Faculty's Research Ethics Board to evaluate the event's impact and related to any new insights and learnings. These are some statements that participants have shared on the surveys. I have 2 lovely daughters and I love them so much. So when they enjoy an event, that's all we need. This is a very special event to give respect to this relationship. It is very emotional event. It teaches the heart, and all the time in life, you never forget your daughters. I think we set the tone for healthy relationships that children take in their lives, and we create the framework they measure the relationship against. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Bhakti. Next, I'm going to introduce Willem Tabak. Willem is the current coordinator of Alberta Men's Network and is the project coordinator for our Manbox art project.
Hello, hello. So this is our Manbox art project. It's been a project we've been working on for a couple of years here. Before we get started, I really want to just thank all the participants and everybody who's already here and has been sharing. It's been such a great event. So our Manbox art project is a project that we developed a couple years ago. It was conceived by one of our practicum students, Nwel, who kind of came up with the idea. So I want to give a big shout out to her, as well as to Liza Lorenzetti, as you guys have met her already. Nicole Schellifer, who was our community artist. She really helped to put the boxes together and kind of come up with the production design work for this project. Arya Boustani, I see he has his camera on here. He has done a lot of our media related to this project, as well as the UFC also collaborated with us on some stuff with media, but Arya has done a lot of the photos and videos and all that. And then finally, just to Sebastian Benavides, he helped a lot with just volunteering and providing time and direction and helping to build the boxes and stuff like that. So just a big thank you to all of those individuals.
The man box was coined 10 to 15 years ago to really describe that the box that society puts men in. We live in a patriarchy, and because of that, society itself puts a lot of pressure on men to behave in a certain way. It's often spoken about like men don't cry, work hard, be tough and strong. And times are changing.
In 2016, the Alberta Men's Network and the Faculty of Social Work designed a men's survey. The survey asked men, what do you need to feel healthy? What do you need to experience well-being and have a good relationships without violence? Over 90% of men said that men need help, but over 75% didn't know where to go. And oftentimes the help that they're looking for is the support of other men, people to look up to, people to talk to.
How do we want to support men? The idea was, let's give them a box, and then let's ask them to put on the outside of the box, what are those things about their masculinity that they want the world to see? And then on the inside, what are the things that they don't really want to show the world about themselves? Let's tap into this whole societal construct that men put ourselves into to be in a certain way and see if we can kind of break out of it.
I migrated in Canada 2008, and lucky enough, I secured a good job here in Alberta. Up to this time, I've been looking for the meaning of why I'm here. My box is very personal. It talks about my dreams. It talks about my advocacy in life, from the childhood, from moving here, my visions of activism, helping the migrant sector, and also who do I want to go with this dream. Like inside the box, there is this handprint of me and my son. It's very symbolic because I want to take my son the journey that I have been through. This project allows me to introspect. I was so lucky to experience those kinds of things. As I grow up, it makes me who I am today, and I don't want to change that. I really recommend this project to other men or fathers that are having trouble of opening up, not only to others, but also to yourself. Sometimes there are some things that you haven't discovered yet. This one box is one way of showing, hey, it's okay, this is me. And part of me is I want to share to you, I want to let you know.
Yeah, that was a really great video that the University of Calgary produced as part of their Arch magazine, alumni magazine, and that everybody on the project contributed to. So I guess, yeah, that video really shows what it was. What we're trying to achieve is really have a new way of working with men in the community, right? And I don't think it needs to even be men, but you know, I think one of the pieces that's missing in the gender discourse is art, right? I don't think we rely enough on it within our community work. And that's really something that we were trying to do with this project is like, you know, maybe one way we can engage men, especially during COVID, when everybody's stuck at home, is to give them men a physical box that they can actually work on and build into and create a better sense of really what their masculinity is all about. So right now, we are doing a collaboration with the Alex. We are using up the last of our boxes to work with, to run some workshops with some of the adolescents. This is a project that we're really hoping will just take off on its own. We just had a principal in BC email us asking for the dimensions of the boxes so that he could start running it with his kids in elementary school. And that's really what we're hoping to achieve, is to inspire community members to, you know, in positions of leadership and who are running groups and with, you know, are really engaged in that community aspect to maybe take this and evolve it, build upon it. This was something that came out of a desire to really engage with men on a deeper, more unique level. So I think that's just about it for me. You can email also the AMN website and I'll get back to you. Hope everybody has a great rest of your day. And
The man box
again,
was
thank
coined.
you to everyone.
Thank you, Will. So next up, I am excited to introduce Nellie Alcaraz. Nellie is the research coordinator for our Fathers in Focus Photo Voice project, along with Nwel Saturay, who is a documentary photographer and the lead artist for this project. Also presenting with them is Dr. Rita Dhungel, and Rita is a social work professor at MacEwan University and is a research lead as well with the stories of transformation.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Nellie Alcaraz, and I am privileged to be coordinating this project, Fathers in Focus Photo Voice project. This project aims to tell the fatherhood stories from the perspectives of fathers themselves in Alberta. This project was approved by Ethics in October 2020, and we started data gathering or the implementation of the project in March of this year. So we hope to share with you a short version of our recruitment video that we used to invite fathers to participate in this study.
Hi everyone, my name is Nwel. I am a photographer and I am the lead artist for the Fathers in Focus research project. A bit about me. I'm a photographer currently based in the city of Utrecht in the Netherlands. I am also a political refugee. When my family fled to Europe and I was a teenager, I used photography as a means to navigate this shocking new environment around me. I didn't speak the language, I didn't understand what was going on around me. And that was also around the time when digital cameras started becoming a common thing. Our mobile devices started coming with cameras in them. So I took my camera everywhere. I photographed everything and nothing in a way to make sense of the world. I took pictures of tunnels, buildings, traffic signs. I took pictures of trees. I took a lot of pictures of my family too in the middle of all this. And without knowing it, I documented the story of my family as we experienced forced migration and integration in a society that is vastly different from what we know. And the funny thing about all that is I didn't realize that I was documenting that story until much, much later. So enough about me, let's talk about Fathers in Focus. There are a couple of terminologies and words that you may have come across reading our websites or the poster that you will encounter and maybe not completely familiar with. There's participatory action research, or PAR. There's photo voice, and we're also talking about focus group meetings. My colleague Aamir Jamal will give us an introduction on participatory action research and what makes it unique in community-based research.
My name is Aamir Jamal, and I am Associate Professor at the Faculty of Social Work, University of Calgary, and I am a co-researcher in this project. I was born and raised in Pakistan, in the northwest Pakistan on the border of Afghanistan, in a city, Peshawar. And then we moved to Canada here to share with others so we can come out with some strategies and actions that can help others in their journey of being father of a daughter. That's why we wanted to explore about this journey, to know more about this journey, to reflect about this journey as a father. That was the core goal of this project. We chose participatory action research for this meaningful project. Why? Because we wanted to engage the community in this kind of research. It's not designed and it's not implemented in the boardrooms or in offices. In this kind of research, participatory action research, a community-oriented research, we go in the community, we talk to community. We don't go to the community as teachers or just researchers, as learners. We want to learn from the community, and that is the key piece in this kind of research, in which you all community members would be fully engaged from day one of the research, and there is action piece into it. The action piece means that this research is not just research. It is bringing some positive change, some action-oriented change in the community, for the community, by all of you, by all of us together. Some of the key benefits of this community-oriented research, fathers, is that number one, we get an opportunity as fathers to reflect on our role. Secondly, this research project will develop some knowledge, some tools, some strategies for practitioners who are working in this particular area for positive social change in the community, as well as this will develop some knowledge for policymakers to include those pieces in when they are making policies for the communities in this area. Your stories, which you are sharing, will benefit all of us and the community at large in many, many wonderful ways. Thank you.
So simply put, in participatory action research, the research will be done with you and not on you. Another word that you may have come across is photo voice. Now, what exactly is photo voice? Photo voice is simply one of many methods, or more specifically, an arts-based method of conducting a community-based participatory action research. It uses photography as a means to explore or document or reflect certain themes, issues, concerns, and realities of a particular community. But instead of having a professional photographer or reporter or researcher to come into your community with a camera and observe from afar, that power is directly given to you. After all, these narratives, these stories are best told through the best experts in this subject, and that is you.
So little is known about men's journeys to becoming nurturing fathers and their transformational process, especially for those who had lived experiences of childhood trauma, family violence, and systemic oppression, including racism, experiences of residential schools, and other forms of structural inequity. But with pervasive societal expectations put upon men to demonstrate and uphold masculinity scripts that depict them as strong, stoic, and not requiring physical and mental health supports, negative physical and mental health outcomes are pervasive for men and can impact family and intimate relationships. This is complicated by persistent gender role stereotypes worldwide, including the expectation that caring work and childcare is women's work, with men being largely exempt. One of the project's goals is to create a storytelling platform for fathers to share their experiences of fatherhood using photography. So in this project, we define fathers as biological fathers, stepfathers, divorced, separated. So we have a broadened definition of fathers. And just to really exhaust and get all the experiences of father. We did not define it as just a biological father. So men and who are who are saying that they are father to a child or children.
Thank you, Nellie. Thank you so much. In order to, to focus on the goals that we came up 3 research questions. The first question is, we wanted to say, what does being a dad mean to you? And we asked, we had 18 participants, 18 community members, men of color, and we asked them to come up with 3 questions when they are taking photographs. And the second question is, does being a father change your view of being a man? Yes or no? And then if yes, how come? And if no, what does that mean to you? And then the last one is, what in your life, past, present, challenge you in being a dad? So those are the 3 questions we asked community members, men of color, coming from different ethnic backgrounds. So in order to achieve those 3 research questions, we had one session is basically to talk about what photo voice is, what participatory action research is, and what we would like to achieve, what is the expectations from the community members and what's the expectation from research teams. We had a brief workshop setting that allows people to come all together and then talk about photo voice project, and then followed by 2 groups, 2 different focus group discussions. The first one is we had is also meet and greet kind of things, but we had the second one is basically discussion part. And one thing is that we use photo voice as an investigative tool and also as a reflective tool in order to achieve those 3 questions, because we heard that from fathers saying that, oh, I didn't even realize until I get into this project how important it is to be father, what my roles are. So those are really interesting conversations from that research part. So I can pass back to Nellie, but in the meantime, I just wanted to say one thing, that I feel so honored to be part of this project. I always have been an opportunity to work with women. I never had an opportunity to work with men in gender justice. So it's just so important to learn from fathers' perspectives, what that means to them and how they are sharing their responsibilities with their family members in home. So it's really great to learn. Thank you.
Thanks, Rita. Yeah, so as Rita mentioned, we had 2 sets of 8 to 10 participants who attended 2 focus group discussions via an online platform, and we held that between May to August of this year. And we were able to find a lot of participants, actually more than what we would like to have. And so we are hoping that we could expand this project in the future. And we recruited participants from all over Alberta, and most of them are racialized men, racialized and Indigenous men from Alberta. So these are just the pictures. So what you're seeing are the pictures that they've shared during our focus group discussions. Yeah, so that's the one of the response to the second question, does being a father change your view of being a man? It's really great to hear these fatherhood stories and journeys. And then the last research question that we posed, that's one of the responses that we got, was what in your life, past or present, challenge or supported you in being a father? So those are just one of the many photos and stories that they've shared, and we are so privileged to being part of this storytelling and photography. How they picture their experiences and stories of fatherhood. So that's where we are at, and right now we are still in the planning stage for the online community exhibition. Everything that you've seen will be at that website, the www.fathersinfocus.com, and those are the community collaborators that we who also collaborated and participated in the project. So they helped us in many stages of this project, and so we are grateful to those organizations for being a part of this Photo Voice fatherhood journey in Alberta. Thank you.
I'll introduce our next two speakers. So Arya Boustani, who is a filmmaker and a core member of Alberta Men's Network, as well as Tito Gomez. Tito is from the Chippewa, Cree, and Tohono tribes, and he has been working as a filmmaker for the past 5 years.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Arya Boustani. Thanks, Sarah, for introducing. I have I'm father of a lovely human being that is now 13 years old, and from her very first few months, I always having thoughts about how to express these feelings, and combination of having so much of the challenges as an immigrant and also being a father. And it changed in so many ways along these years. And I'm really glad that this fatherhood project started, and it is the combination of a research and making a film. And I've done some filmmaking, and I'm really glad to be part of this. So I'm just talking briefly about what's the project about, and then following that, my friend and colleague Tito Gomez will talk about the movie production side of things. So first of all, I'm going to talk about why we are doing this. Well, we are interested in learning from men about their journey through fatherhood with hopes of engaging other dads and also community members, practitioners, policymakers, and researchers in conversations and actions that support nurturing fatherhood. Who's doing this study? It is a research study being conducted by the University of Calgary Faculty of Social Work in collaboration with Alberta Men's Network. The study is being led by Liza, Lorenzetti, Aamir, Jamal, and Sebastian Benavides in collaboration with members of Alberta Men's Network, Tito Gomez, Arya Boustani, Pong, Beebe, Lemlem, Haile, and Doug Murphy. So how we are doing it is that we welcome the stories from any male-identified Indigenous or racialized immigrant person who is in a fathering role, which for us means providing care and role modeling for a child or children. This can include biological fathers, but also stepfathers, guardians, grandfathers, uncles, big brothers, and any other kind of relationship. And you need to be 18 years old to be able to participate. There are 4 questions. How do you think culture or the society defines the role of a father? Does that match the way you define it? And also you're providing your role to the family. And it is a big question because we know that there is always a difference between what our roots are and what we are believing to take place for as a human being. And sometimes we alter those original learnings. And the second question is, since becoming a father, have you reflected on how you were raised and how has that affected the way you are as a parent? So it is also going back to comparing our own upbringing to what we are doing. And third question is, are you doing things differently from your father? If yes, when and why did you decide to do things differently as a father? And this basically puts more magnifying glass on what particularly we see as a difference that we are trying to create. And the last question is, how would you define a good father, and what are some qualities or attributes of a good father? And we are hoping that fathers that we are going to interview, they can materialize some form of value and wish for who they want to be as a father, and can give answer to these 4 questions. Now I'm passing it to my friend, Tito Gomez.
Hello, everyone. I hope my video's on. I hope audio is good. Sweet, fantastic. So I'll be directing these kind of short films. We're looking at about 4 different stories from 4 different backgrounds, talking about fatherhood. The biggest, I guess what you could kind of say is if you watch the TV show Goldbergs, their theme song, there's one line in there that's where it says, "Don't know about the future, but the past keeps getting clearer every day." And that's what it's all about, is just kind of looking past in the past and figuring out why kind of things happen. And I know some people may be scared to go on camera and talk about their trauma, talk about their childhood, because it may have a negative effect on family members. However, that's not what we want to do. We want to talk about the healing, but we also kind of need the backstory, the context of what you're healing from. And the best way to do that is just handle it with respect. I know nowadays we love to look back on the past with today's eyes, but that's not the point. It's no one's fault of how things happened. It's no one's fault of our upbringing. It's not about the blame game. It's just about how we are now fathers. We are now have human beings in our lives, little ones that we're responsible for, even furry ones. So if you see my dog coming through, I'm also a pet owner. So it's about just having that understanding. What are we doing differently now as opposed to when we were being raised? And having these children, having these little ones that we're now responsible for, how is that changing our lives and doing things differently? Even looking at our culture and going, we did this when we were little, I'm going to do it a little bit differently. The goal isn't to criticize anyone's culture or family, but to bring that conversation into the light, to create that healing, because you never know who could be watching on the other side of the camera. You may connect with an audience member and create that aha moment, and then have that healing process start for that person. And that's all that this project's going to be. So we want to create some short films, 15 minutes long, 20 minutes maybe, of just how are we healing through fatherhood, through our own experiences, creating a better understanding. So thank you very much.
Next, I'm going to invite Verónica to speak. Verónica is currently completing her Master's of Social Work with the Faculty of Social Work at the University of Calgary, and she is also a research assistant with Alberta Men's Network and is a key member of the Latino Men's Wellbeing Project.
Thank you, Sarah, for the presentation. Hello, everyone. Hola a todos. Bienvenidos. I am very happy that I'm going to share with you the work that we are doing with the Latino men's well-being. I am very happy that everybody meets our team. The team is with Fanny Oliphant, Liza Lorenzetti, Tamara Humphrey, Jeff Halvorsen, and Sebastian Benavides. The Latino Men's Wellbeing Workshop was developed by Fanny to meet needs identified during the men's survey. These sessions were in person. In 2019, the University of Calgary held a research as we wanted to know if this workshop was a best practice. We saw in the results the transformation that the participants had. Since 2019, we have been running 4 workshops in Spanish and also in English for the community. We had 1 workshop for women. The workshops are 10 sessions each. We have it for once a week, 2 hours, with 1 facilitator. In some of the workshops, we have 2 co-facilitators. And approximately we have 10 participants each time. Okay, and the curriculum aims to enhance men's well-being and promote healthy relationships. We are creating a safe space where men can get together and have healthy conversations. We have discussions about masculinity, about fatherhood, family of origin. Men have opportunity to explore and challenge their idiosyncrasies, values, and beliefs. And here we can see the learnings that we have through the sessions. We have different activities and experiential exercises. This is important because the participants, they're committed each week to practice one learning. We learn about neuroscience, brain development, trauma, child development, parenting, family violence and its effects, self-awareness, mind and body, and resilience, positive psychology. In 2019, I participated as a co-facilitator, and I also as my role of research assistant. I brought the pre and post test, and I was collecting every week every session their feedbacks, and I kept these feedbacks because they are very powerful. Some of them, they say that we don't argue as often at home. I pay attention to my emotions, to my body. Family is important and my family is better now. Another one is, I never believed that someone will care of giving us all this information. My wife will join a women's group after my experience in the group. This group is positive because we came out of our isolation. So now, what are we currently working on? Our sessions are online due to COVID. Maybe we will go back in person according to the restrictions. We are working on a community brief. We are developing a facilitator's guide. And Fanny started yesterday training sessions for future leaders. And we're working all the team on an academic article. Thank you very much. Gracias. We hope that other communities would beneficiate of this learning and exchange information. And as a collective, we want to acknowledge the help that we have from Herbert Campos, Marcos Lopez, Luis Vasquez, and Abbas Mansi, all the contribution that they had for the Latino Men's Support Group. And here is the contact information from the team. So we are excited to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Vero. And now I will bring Jeff back from the very beginning to present on our last presentation for the day.
Hi, everybody. I'm just thinking about our friends in Pakistan, and it must be getting late, and so I'm bringing my monotone voice back to you. So hopefully you can make it through. So the team, I would like to thank Doug Murphy, Yassi Parani, Israel Faisa, Will Tabak, and Sarah Thomas, who have all, among other people, participated and helped co-develop and organize this book study. So how it started, there was some of us were asked as white men to speak out against racism, and felt deeply moved to. And during vigil in June of 2020, the white men, during the discussion, we noticed that there was one white man who was working through a lot of things and taking up a lot of space, and it was kind of painful for me remembering some of my own missteps in some of these spaces. So we got together, some of us, and thought, hey, let's make some space for white men where that is a better opportunity and more appropriate space to work through some of these things about racism and do our own learning and keep on growing and finding a way to contribute. So we got together, some of us, and developed some principles. So we develop commitments to learning and accountability and to action. We committed to taking responsibility to do our own work and our own unlearning a lot of things that we'd been taught. And we drew a lot from some work by a lot of people here and other people of faculty of social work and community leaders in the anti-racism, anti-colonization learning series. And learned from Black Lives Matter principles, on the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, and from some pro-feminist principles too. We made commitments to be accountable to Black, Indigenous, and racialized people and to white women. Partly how we did that was by having an open space that was open to critique, and we set out principles about how to hear that critique, and did some pre-work around that. And then we also talked about our relationship to each other, so affirming the principle of calling in. So when we are making missteps, which we most certainly will and did make, we agreed to call each other in with support and encouragement, and really resist being competitive with each other or being experts or grandstanding. Being the best anti-racist white man was something that we resisted. So how it went, we've gone through 2 iterations at the moment. So we went through, so you want to talk about race, with 5 to 6 people. And then we picked collaboratively Policing Black Lives by Robert Maynard, which talks about the Canadian context specifically. We didn't pre-plan anything. As a few of us started, we went with the people who showed up and what people wanted to learn. So some of the big takeaways, we're all a little uncomfortable, but not, but yes, but not. We're uncomfortable admitting our discomfort or comfort, and feeling each other out and the space out. So it takes basically to say that this was a relationship building. And how to hold each other accountable without grandstanding, and it was messy, and continues to be messy. And then one of the things, big takeaways too for the group, was talk about the system, not the individual as racist, to start. And this affects a lot of our families and relationships. So how to have these conversations productively without devolving into angry yelling, and not that was always avoided, and then to be strategic about talking about racism. So depending on who you're talking to, different strategies, sometimes holding people to account, and sometimes one of the people talked about breadcrumbing, just putting out ideas and soft challenges, and opportunities along the way, while not, again, holding ourselves up as better than other people because we're just reading a book. So maintaining that humility. Yeah, and then affirming kind of multiple experiences. So a lot of the logic of white supremacy and whiteness, and especially for white men, is saying, well, just because it doesn't happen to me means that it doesn't happen to you. So that really working to undermine that kind of thinking. Yeah, so we're about to start a new group in the next couple weeks and take a look at a new book. So if you're interested, I'll pop my email address, or it's right there. It's everything. Thanks.
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who stayed with us. I know it's a lot of information in a little bit of time. I want to save the rest of our time for the project's knowledge keeper, Pam Beebe, who is going to close this event for us. Pam Beebe is a member of the Kainai Nation, currently residing in Calgary, and she is currently working as a system planner with the Calgary Homeless Foundation, and as I said, is the knowledge keeper for our stories of personal transformation.